Once upon a time, there lived a very beautiful girl named Mma. Mma was the most beautiful girl in the village, and all the young girls in the village wanted to be associated with her because she was the delight of all. Mma, however, made sure that people knew little about her and the fact that she was a twin. Mma had a twin brother who was born with a deformity. He could not stand upright, and his name was Nnamdi. Mma was too ashamed of her twin brother and would most times blot out hurtful words at him, warning him never to tell anyone that he was her brother. Whilst the villagers loved Mma because of how beautiful she was, they mocked her twin brother because of his deformity. At a point, Mma refused to be associated with her brother as she did not want the villagers to know that they were siblings. On several occasions, Mma denied knowing her brother Nnamdi in public and even called him condescending names to prove a point to the villagers that Nnamdi was not her brother. This broke Nnamdi's heart as he could not believe that his twin sister Mma would deny him in public. He would stay indoors all day whilst Mma moved around the village with her friends. Mma never allowed her friends to visit her home as she always made up excuses on why they should never visit. One day, a very handsome man saw Mma walking on the streets of the village with her friends and picked interest in her. Mma had always bragged to her friends that she would marry a very handsome man, so she always turned down advances from men who seemed not to be so good looking. Once Mma caught sight of the handsome man, she immediately picked an interest in him and made up her mind to marry him. The next day, Mma was heading to the stream when she bumped into the young handsome man again. The young man was mesmerized by her beauty and ran to approach her. "I am Azubike," he said, as he smiled at Mma, who couldn't contain her joy. As days and weeks passed, Mma and Azubike began to spend more time together, and soon Mma fell deeply in love with Azubike. Most evenings, Azubike would escort Mma home, and Mma made sure that her brother was locked up in his room whenever she knew that Azubike would be escorting her home. Mma did everything possible to ensure that Nnamdi's existence remained a secret, and this went on for a while till one fateful day. Nnamdi caught wind of the fact that his twin sister Mma was in a relationship with Azubike. So one day, whilst Azubike escorted Mma home, Nnamdi ran out of their hut to warn Azubike to leave his sister alone. This infuriated Mma, who denied ever having a brother or knowing who Nnamdi was. Mma never told Azubike that she had a twin brother and was too ashamed of her twin, so she chose never to speak of him. She was so scared that Azubike would change his mind to marry her if he found out that her twin brother had a disability. When Azubike left, Mma screamed at her brother and warned him never to interfere in her business. She called him condescending names again, saying that she wished he was never born. This cut so deep as Nnamdi began to cry. He could not understand what he did wrong in life to warrant this kind of hate from his own twin sister, who he shared a womb space with for 9 months. Nnamdi then decided to leave the house that evening. He was too hot and decided to take a stroll to clear his head. On his way, a group of boys surrounded him and began to bully him. His sister Mma was passing by and caught sight of the boys bullying her brother, but she walked past and pretended not to know Nnamdi, leaving him in the hands of the bullies. This was the final straw that broke the camel's back, as Nnamdi was so heartbroken. Late that night, Mma's parents returned and noticed that Nnamdi was nowhere to be found. They searched for him all around but couldn't find him. They asked Mma if she had seen her brother, but she denied ever seeing him that day. The next morning came, but Nnamdi had still not been found. Their parents searched the whole place for him but couldn't find him. Nnamdi's disappearance did not bother Mma, who looked at it as a blessing, especially as Azubike had already asked her to marry him and was coming soon to perform the traditional rites to make her his wife. Nnamdi not being around will prove to Azubike that Mma truly did not have a twin brother with a disability, so Mma was extremely happy. As days turned into weeks, Azubike notified Mma of his intentions to perform the marital rites. He picked a date and Mma was filled with so much excitement. She was about to get married to the man of her dreams, and this set butterflies in her stomach. Mma began to make preparations for her marriage ceremony and decided to invite all her friends. This was a very proud moment for her, as she was about to marry the most handsome man in the village, a man that was admired by all the women in the village. Preparations began, and on one afternoon, Mma left her house for the market. She had to pick up some items for the wedding and stumbled upon a very old woman on her way to the market who told her that she sees disaster looming ahead. The old woman told Mma that that which is missing is more valuable than that which has been found, and that Mma's focus should be on that which has been lost. If not, Mma would suffer for the rest of her life. Mma hissed and walked out on the old woman, who she believed was mad. All that she could think about was her upcoming marriage to Azubike, so she continued to the market. A few days passed, and the day for the marriage finally arrived. Mma's excitement knew no bounds as she waited for the arrival of her husband to be Azubike. All her friends gathered as they cheered her on as the newest bride to be. Azubike and his uncles finally arrived and performed the traditional marital rites. Mma had never been so happy in her life. She began to fantasize about the beautiful children they would make, and this put a smile on her face. The wedding ceremony was so colorful, and by evening, Mma left her home with her new husband. They journeyed to Azubike's house, and Azubike took Mma to a very beautiful room and told her to settle in whilst he goes sort some things out. Mma agreed and waited for her husband to return. For hours, Azubike did not return, so Mma decided to go out in search of her husband. To her greatest surprise, Mma noticed that the door of her hut was locked. She began to bang on the door, but no one opened up. The next morning, Azubike came to the hut and slid a plate of food through the opening beneath the door. And when Mma pleaded to him for him to open the door, Azubike reminded her of a day many years ago when she insulted him and called him names because he tried to speak to her. Azubike was not so handsome then because of the way he dressed. He made up his mind on that day to marry Mma by all means possible to repay her for how she treated him on that day. Azubike never loved Mma but pretended to love her so as to accomplish his mission. Mma screamed for help, but no one came to her rescue, so she remained his prisoner for months as no one knew what was going on. Every day, Mma would cry herself to sleep. She began to lose so much weight and her beauty began to fade. The man of her dreams turned out to be her worst nightmare, and Mma could not believe it. She always prayed for someone to come find her, but months passed and no one came to her rescue. One afternoon, whilst Mma was crying, she felt a cold breeze brush through her skin. All the hairs on her body stood as goosebumps filled her body. Mma then saw her twin brother Nnamdi, who no longer looked disabled. She tried to hold him but found out that she couldn't. Mma then realized that her twin brother was now a ghost. Mma did not know that her brother Nnamdi died on the same day that she got married. What happened was that after Nnamdi left their house, he decided to go live in the village cave, as that was the only safe place he could stay in the village without being bullied. Whilst he was asleep one morning, Nnamdi was attacked by a ravenous lion that strayed into the cave. He struggled for his life, but the lion overpowered him and finally killed him. So whilst Mma was getting married, her brother was being killed by a lion. When Mma heard this, tears filled her eyes as she apologized to her twin brother for all that she did to him. Mma then remembered what the old woman told her in the market, and this brought tears to her eyes. Nnamdi then opened the door for his twin sister Mma to escape, and when she returned home, everyone was shocked to hear all that had been happening behind their backs. Her family then went out in search of Azubike, who fled, unknowing that Mma had escaped from the hut. The story of all that happened spread around the village, and Mma learnt her lesson the hard way, as she began to treat everyone nicely and with respect, regardless of how they looked. The lesson to be learned from this story is that one should never judge or mistreat others based on their appearance or disabilities. Treat everyone with kindness and respect, for what is hidden or lost can be more valuable than what is found. I hope you enjoyed the story. Please like, subscribe and leave a comment. It helps us grow our channel. I'll see you in our next story. Bye.